Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Another edition of the business side of music. Sitting across the console from me today is an old buddy of mine that we met, 20 years ago or so. Might even been a little longer when I was at one of the record labels. Tim Riley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could make it here. You know, when we finally reconnected several months ago, we were still able to meet in public places and not wear masks right. And, not have to worry about the COVID thing. Obviously affected the business. We talk about that a lot on the show. Let's go back in time, Tim Riley. How'd you get started in the business?
I was just kind of knocking around doing different jobs, and somehow, and I honestly forgot how it happened, a friend of mine says, you need to meet this guy, Marty Lacker. I didn't have a clue who Marty Lacker was. So I met him, and he was starting a small boutique record company called Pepper Records, which was a division of Pepper Tanner. And they were the big company that, if a radio station needed a news car, they'd give it to them, and then they'd rate card them 5-1 or something, and they get all that advertising space. But anyway, I met Marty. He gave me a job. I think it was for $75 a week.
Wow.
To me, back in 1967, I felt like I was a millionaire. I mean, that was more money than I'd ever seen. And, it wasn't 20 minutes after we got talking, he said, well, I'm going out to Elvis's later. And I went, what? He said, and so I got the backstory. Marty was Elvis Presley's right-hand man for a bazillion years. And he got married and he had a kid, and his wife kept saying, come on, this lifestyle is not for us. Anyway, he basically handed me a list. He said, here are all our distributors. I want you to call them all, introduce yourself, and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, after 2 years, we were distributed by Scepter Records, which had Dionne Warwick and B.J. Thomas and several other unknown acts. And one day, in the mail at my house, I got a package from Scepter Records. I opened it up, and it was a song that B.J. Thomas had recorded over at American Studios in Memphis. It was called Raindrops, Keep Falling on My Head.
Wow.
Well, at the time, my best buddy, just running buddy, was the music director at the powerhouse RKO station in Memphis, WHBQ. So I took it over there and I said, Rob, what do you think? He said, oh, my God. He added it immediately. So I called Scepter and talked to Steve Tyrell, the national guy, who later became a famous composer and orchestra soundtrack guy. And he said, you're kidding me. I said, no. He said, I'll call you back. So it was late in the afternoon. I went home. The phone rang again. He said, Tim, how'd you get that record? I said, well, Rob Walker and I are good buddies, and he's the music director. And, of course, I didn't think anything about it. He was just good buddies. He said, all right, man, I can't thank you enough. A week later, I get a check in the mail made out to Tim Riley for $100. It was from Scepter Records. And I opened the check up and read the description. It said, for independent promotion. I went, what in the heck is this?
You had never done this before in your life.
Never. I'd been in the music business 22 minutes, I didn't have a clue. So I called him. I said, hey, Steve, looks like Pepper Records is closed. And he said, don't you worry. I said, I've got a question. What is independent record promotion? He cracked up. He said, hold on. he gets Russ Thyrett from Warner Brothers, several other guys on a conference call. He said, "Are you there, Tim?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "Would you ask that question one more time?" I said, "Well, I want to thank you for this nice check, but what is independent record promotion?" So 6 other guys are laughing. Needless to say, the following day, I was getting FedEx packages from these different labels, and they hired me. And at first, I had 1 account, and then I had 2 accounts, and then I had 3 accounts, and I had 5 or 6 accounts, and man, I was off and running.
Wow.
And back in those days, you could walk into a radio station and say, whether it's Rob Walker, or Mike Powell, or Ron Olson, or Greg Hamilton, you could play them your record, and they go, "Oh, I love this," and they put it on. Well, before I knew it, I had a brand new car, I had $100 in my pocket, and I thought that I had conquered the world. During the Memphis days, obviously Marty had a great impact on my life, and through Marty I met the people at Stax, the great R&B label. It's just historic, all the artists they cut. Aretha Franklin recorded a lot of her stuff down there, and I got to sit around those sessions. And again, I don't know any better. I thought, oh, wow, that's Aretha Franklin. That's cool. As I started learning, I was going, whoa, this is exciting. And so that's kind of how I got started. On a side note, Pepper Records had been in business a couple of years, and I could see the writing on the wall, and Marty could too. They just weren't serious about what they were doing.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know, December the 15th or something, and Marty said, "I'm going to Elvis Presley's Christmas party." I went, "Oh, cool, man. I hope you have a good time." He said, "Would you like to go?" I went, "Duh." I accidentally met Elvis. It was on the 30th or 31st of December, so it was a combination Christmas party, New Year's party, and it was in a club in the basement of a big apartment complex. And so anyway, Elvis and his entourage come in and sit at the table, and David Flashman had a group called Flash and the Casuals, and he's still a good friend of mine. He was the music entertainment. So anyway, they come in and sit down, and then they start mixing. Well, I'm talking to somebody, and unbeknownst to me, Elvis is talking to somebody right behind me. So at the same time I took a step back, Elvis took a step back, and we bumped backs together. And I turned around. I'm literally 6 inches from Elvis, and I just went completely numb. And he said, "Hi, I'm Elvis. What's your name?" I'm, shaking my head going, "My name's Tim Riley." He said, "What do you do, Tim?" I said, "Well, I work for Marty Lacker." And he said, "I'm so sorry." So many years later, after doing promotion and marketing and sales, and at the time when I got married, I was about 29 years old, and I married Michelle Novrese, whose father was one of the partners in a record store chain called Poplar Tunes, but they also owned a little label called High Records.
I remember High Records.
And High Records had a little-known artist named Al Green.
That's right.
I used to hang with Al Green in the kitchen at the back of, it was actually upstairs in the back of Poplar Tunes on 308 Poplar. It was just, he's just one of the guys, One day he came in with a big attaché case. I mean, it was big. It was like 3 feet. It was almost like what a tennis player would carry. It was a big, long thing. He said, "Mr. Norris, I need for you to put this in the safe." Mr. Norris said, "Well, okay, what is it?" He said, and he's unzipped it, and he'd been on tour, and it's just packed full of cash. And Mr. Norris said, Whoa, I can't put that in my safe. How much is there?" Al Green zipped it closed. He said, "Mr. Norris, I trust you. Please put it in your safe." And so he did, and of course I wasn't there when he came back to get it, but I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
And then in 1983, I moved up to Nashville. My first project is Larry Hamby had just moved from the West Coast to CBS Records here, and he was an executive with Epic, and he introduced me to Roy Wunsch, fabulous man. Roy kind of was the first to take me under his wings. And then through hook and crook, and I don't remember the whole story, but I produced Dolly Parton's Home for Christmas radio special. And it aired on 700 radio stations around the country.
Had you ever done anything like that before either?
No, of course not.
Yeah?
Of course not. But for some reason, when I met her, she just loved me. And the CBS executives had promised it to ABC and Westwood One and all these big national syndicators. And Dolly Parton said, "No, Tim Riley is going to do my..." Oh, boy. And so you talk about I was in the hot seat for a number of months.
Wow.
But she loved it, and people still call me and request, hey, do you have a CD of the Home for Christmas radio special?
We're going to take a little break, get a word in for our sponsor, and when we come back, we're going to pick up this. I got to say, I'm loving this journey we're taking with Tim Riley. Very cool.
Hey, this is Jack Foreman with Bicoastal Productions. Join us as we have a look behind the mics and lights here on the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Hi, this is Tom Sabella, the creator, founder, and co-producer of the Business Side of Music podcast. It's loyal listeners such as yourself that make our podcast successful. Take the time to sign up for our weekly newsletter. Not only does it contain information on upcoming podcast episodes, but also informative tidbits on the music industry and even bonus items that we give away. All you have to do is sign up at businesssideofmusic.com and we will send you Larry Butler's new singer-songwriter rulebook. That's it. All you have to do is go to businesssideofmusic.com, sign up, and we will send you Larry Butler's new book. Thanks to all our loyal listeners. We love you.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the console from me here, Tim Riley. You know, you talk about you got into this game, independent radio promotions, totally not knowing what you were doing. And I remember before you and I had met, I got a phone call from John Curb, who is Mike Curb's cousin, and wanted to hire me to work for the label. And he said, we're going to make you a radio promotions coordinator. And I'm like, great. Hung up the phone and I went, what in the heck is that? But, you know, back in those days, that's how we all kind of got the gigs. You know, we just said yes.
Yeah, it was a great training ground. No matter what you did, you didn't realize how much you were learning so rapidly.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And you kind of had to just be able to move with the flow. I call it bob and weave. You know, you've got to be a good listener, and you learn so much just by osmosis. It's unbelievable.
I remember Galen Adams, who used to be with RCA Records and worked with Elvis and then came over to MCG Curb, and that's how I met him. I remember him saying to me one day, don't worry about the horse, just load the cart. And I always thought, I had never heard that expression because I was a California boy at the time. That was a true Southern, Georgia expression. But I got to thinking about it. God, that makes perfect sense. And Galen was the perfect mentor for me because he took his time in teaching me the business. And, back in those days, we didn't go to college like they do today. You didn't go to Belmont or Vanderbilt or music schools back then. You just got into the game feet first.
Right.
And you hoped for the best.
Yeah, there was no MTSU or any of those, like Beverly, what's her name, Keel, who's a professor out there. You didn't have those people to kind of guide you. But nothing prepares you until you get thrown in.
Right.
And say, okay, this is your job. This is how we do it. And you just learn.
You went in doing this Dolly Parton radio special. I remember meeting you. I think you were doing a Tim McGraw radio special for us at the label.
Yeah, what happened is, a brief story, I'd been calling on Mike Borchetta, and Mike wouldn't give me the time of day. Well, unbeknownst to me, 2 months later, Dennis Hannon and Mike Curb moved to Nashville. And all of a sudden, Dennis was kind of running things. So I called over there one time, asked for Mike. I said, Mike, man, I'm doing some really cool things. He said, the guy you need to talk to is Dennis Hannon. I said, okay, I don't know him. I said, I'll transfer you. Dennis Hannon. I went, my name's Tim Riley, and you don't know me, and I do some really cool stuff. He says, where are you? I said, well, I'm in my office. He said, how far away is that? I said, 3 blocks. He said, I'll see you in 5 minutes, and he hung up the phone. I went, oh, my God. I didn't have time to gather my thoughts. I said, I got 5 minutes to get to this guy's office. So, on Music Row, there's the alley, so I just pumped it down the alley, pulled in, walked into the receptionist. I said, my name's Tim Riley. I'm here to see Dennis Hannon. The receptionist at the time said, Mr. Hannon, Tim Riley's here to see you. I could hear him through the phone. Send him on up. So I went upstairs, and I told him what I did. He said, this is what I want you to do. After I'd given him my spiel of about 6 minutes, he's just looking at me like, this guy's either crazy or he knows what he's doing.
Or a little of both.
Yeah, a little of both. He said, this is what I need you to do. He said, A, B, and C. He said, send me a bill. Talk to you later, Tim. Nice meeting you. He's doing this as he's standing up and ushering me to this door.
Right.
And that started, about a 16-year ride. Roy Wunsch was amazing to me because he gave me a break, but Dennis Hannon was my teacher.
I got to say the same thing. Dennis was so amazing. When I'd gone to work for the label as a radio promotions coordinator, and they moved me to Los Angeles. Well, originally they were going to move me to Nashville, and they said, now we're going to move you to Burbank. So I started in the Burbank office. That's where John Kerr was at. And I don't know, 8 weeks into the gig, they let John go. They moved him on to something else. And they said, all right, well, we've got a new guy, but he's in Nashville, and he's already got radio promotions coordinator. We don't know what we're going to do with you. Dennis said, but when I come to Los Angeles, let's get together and have lunch. So for, 6 or 8 weeks, I'm going into the office every day. I'm basically playing solitaire on the computer and surfing the internet in its infancy at that time. One day I get a phone call from Dennis, and he goes, I'm at the such and such hotel in Beverly Hills. Come on over and see me. Let's have lunch. So I go on over there, and I remember Dennis saying to me, what do you see yourself doing? Mm-hmm. Now, understand, I had spent 15 years on the road touring with bands. I had never been home. I was always on the road. And the reason I went to work for the record label was so I could stay home.
Right.
And I said, well, if you really want to know what I want to do, I'd love to head up your Christian division one day. And he goes, well, that's nice, but we have somebody doing that. He said, we figured out what we're going to do. We're going to make you manager of artist development for the label. And I went, great. Mm-hmm. What's that?
Yeah, exactly.
And the next thing I knew, he had me on the road nonstop for 2 years.
Wow.
But he made a promise to me. He said, I knew you always wanted to move to Nashville. He says, you stick it out for a year, and we'll get you moved to Nashville. And his word, Dennis Hannon's word, was good. The next year to the day, my family was moving to Nashville, Tennessee. Now, I'm still on the road, touring with all these acts on the roster, but that's how Dennis was. And then I remember about a year later, I got a phone call from Dennis, and he goes, where are you? And I said, I'm in Las Vegas. I don't even think they knew where I was at that point, because every day I was out with somebody else. And he said, well, I need you to fly back here to Nashville. We need to talk. And, of course, when you get that phone call,
it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, this isn't going to be good. So I hopped on a flight. Next day, landed in Nashville, went to Dennis's office and met with him. And he said, how are you doing? I said, I think I'm doing fine. And he goes, great. I just want to let you know you're taking over the Christian division.
Wow, yeah.
And I went, wonderful. And he goes, I need you to hop a plane and fly out to Reno, Nevada tonight. But that's just how he was. He was, and he gave you, I always said, he and Mike Herb always gave you enough rope to either tie it behind a boat and go skiing or hang yourself, one of the two, one way or another. But they always gave you enough latitude. And Dennis was just a great guy that way.
Through Dennis, of course, I knew a lot of people in the creative community in Memphis where I was from because I used to hang out with Isaac Hayes and David Porter, and they'd be cutting or goofing off, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, we think it was called the Toddle House. It's probably similar to a mini Crystal. But up here, Dennis taught me some marketing tricks, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't know he was teaching me. He was just saying, Tim, have you ever thought about this? And I'd say, no, but I sure will. And he kind of chuckled. And then, 3 days later, he'd call and say, have you thought about it? I'm like, yes, sir. We were off and running. We did crazy things. When Tim McGraw got stranded He had gone on vacation alone. He was trying to get away from one lady or something. And he was in the Caribbean, and that hurricane came through. We were doing a worldwide live uplink, downlink satellite radio special in like 2 days. And the whole Caribbean's wiped out. Long story short, we got him back in, and just by the hair of our chinny chin chin. He literally landed in Nashville an hour and 40 minutes before we were starting the show.
The radio special.
Yeah. And then the other time, Dennis said, we need to do something unique. And I said, well, what do you have in mind? He said, well, by then Tim and I were on the same page because I'd done a lot of marketing things for like Walmart and Target and in-store announcements and a cornucopia of audio products. So he said, I wonder who his favorite football player is. And I went, I have no idea.
Dennis is asking you this?
Yeah. He said, give me a couple of days. I'll call you. Okay, bye. And then a couple of days later, he said, how soon can you do a live radio special? I said, man, I need 10 days. He said, you got a week. Brett Favre flew in on a private jet from wherever in the heck he was, up in Green Bay or something, flew down. He was like the guest host along with Charlie Chase, Brett Favre, and Tim McGraw. Boy, was that a fun day. Brett signed an autographed football. I handed it to him in the box. And he kind of slid out of the box, and he was rubbing it. And I said, is this the same NFL official football you used in the Super Bowl? He said, absolutely. He said, and the thing is every play they give us a new ball. And you feel this powdery coating on it. He said they were slicker than poo-poo through a goose. You know, the center would try to rub it, and I would try to rub it. But we didn't have time. It was time to hike the ball.
Yeah.
You know, and so he signed it, and McGraw signed it, and I have a picture of Tim on one side, Brett Favre on the other, and me in the middle grinning like a Cheshire cat.
And you got the football.
I got the football.
Good for you.
I mean, it's just back, I call that back then. As the industry started seriously changing 10 years ago, and then drastically changing 8 years ago, the personal interaction with artists, unless you're with a major label, is very, very hard to do.
It's almost gone.
It's almost gone.
Yeah.
You walk into a Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and you go in and you look for the new whatever Tim McGraw album. And there are no albums in any of these stores. And they were all replaced 8 or 10 years ago, maybe longer, by video games and movies.
Yeah.
Because the margin was so much better for those.
You and I, we were in the business. You started earlier than I did. But you and I were in the business at the best of time.
Absolutely.
I mean, I always kind of joke with people, we had no budgets back then because you just spent the money to get the job done, and
right.
You didn't worry about it until the day came that we did have budgets, right. and we had to abide by those. The business has changed, and you said in the last 8 to 10 years it's changed dramatically. We're never going to get back to where we were.
I don't believe so. Yeah. I think the digital formats, I will say this, not only for the established artists, but for new independent artists, there's a neat little threshold opportunity for people to kind of develop a following. You know, I call it guerrilla marketing or whatever it is. It's in the trenches.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. Everybody thinks, wow, man, y'all had it easy in the old days. No. Even great records needed special attention, you know?
It could take 6 months to get a single working at radio back in those days.
Yeah. Well, it's the same now. Media base, 26 weeks, some records before they get top 5.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for another sponsor. And when we come back, I want to talk about radio specials and see if there's a place for them and what that artist can do these days.
Hey, this is Bob Eckman, and you're listening to the second most listened to music business podcast out there with Bob Bender of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful, sunny, hot day, but we're looking out the window and it's the grass is green and the sky's blue and we can't complain. Tim Riley is sitting across the console from me here. Radio specials. You talked about Dolly Parton. I remember, the Tim McGraw special. I'd never heard the story about Brett Favre. That was cool, but I remember we did one or two specials with Leanne Rimes and with Tim McGraw. You worked with some other artists. I think you did something with John Cougar Mellencamp.
I did.
At one time. When you put together a radio special, first of all, is there still a place for something like that? We do a podcast, which in a certain aspect is like a radio show.
Sure.
You can just listen to it anytime you want. The difference is we can talk for as long or as short as we want to about a particular topic. We can have artists come on the show and play music or not. That's really one of our biggest differences from radio. But is there a place for that special anymore for the artist?
Yeah, most of the major labels are doing specials around Memorial Day or Labor Day or, big holidays, Christmas, Easter, and they'll get 4 or 5 of their big acts to participate. For an emerging artist, you can do what I call it's like mini bit.
What is it?
Mini bit.
Mini bit.
Mini bit. It's kind of like you can put 3 or 4 little vignettes together, and then you can pump them out on social media a little bit at a time. So, yes,
But it's a different platform now,
absolutely.
Though. Yeah.
It's hard to... You go on any of the social platforms, and if you don't hook them in the first 8 or 10 seconds, they're on to another. They're suffering for something else.
Right.
So it's got to be catchy, edgy, fun, and sometimes hilarious. You've just got a few minutes to get to hook them. Now, if you hook them, then you got a chance to play a single. So it's a delicate balance, as you know.
The radio specials back then versus what they are now, a difference in length, difference in content, or...
Back when radio stations were begging for content, you could produce a 30-minute radio special with 3 commercial breaks and an hour-long special with maybe 6 or 5 commercial breaks. And you would give that inventory to the local radio station. They could go out and sell it to the local car dealership or the bank or whatever in their market. They could make money. So it was a revenue stream for the radio station. It sure helped the artists get their music exposed. And depending on how you construct the special, you can always end with, quote, their next big single. So there's the tease part about the radio special that's intriguing to listeners. And we did, I think I did over 100 of them from various artists. I did Lori Morgan and, oh my God, I can't even remember. Tim McGraw, Jody Messina, on and on and on. But in today's environment, you got to be real careful what you put on a social platform in the way of content.
In what regards?
Well, you got to be careful that you grab them. You grab that prospective listener, or in my case, that prospective consumer. You grab them on the front end and say, hey, you don't know me, but I got some great music and let's go. It's kind of a call to action to the listener of the platform to get them involved rapidly. So they go, oh, wow, this could be something different.
Do you think this is a platform for the independent artist today, or is this something really designed for the established major artist, or will it work for both?
It'll work for both. The major artists have an advantage because they have their sister and brother acts from that major label supporting the thing. So you've got 4 major big names on the same program. And they may only play one song for each artist. So that's an obvious advantage because the familiarity, the brand is established. For an independent artist, you've got to work on that brand. That's why I recommend doing short bits. I haven't done many of those. I've been doing mostly consulting. I've been real blessed in I'm trying to think, I started in 1967. So how many years was that, Bob?
It's a long time ago.
55 years. And I'm trying to help young people avoid what are called the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Not of just Music Row, but of the music business. You're going to go in the studio and cut some music. That needs to be addressed. What are your plans after you record the music? How can you most effectively use the limited budget that you obviously have? And what's your end game? You know, well, I want to be a star. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
There are 10,000 other people in Nashville waiting tables and that also want to be a star.
So what you're saying is it's creating that game plan.
Exactly.
But a realistic game plan at the same time.
You've got to find an artist that you feel comfortable with that's willing to learn. Kind of that same philosophy you and I had when we started. It's like, oh, wow, this guy has the experience. He has some knowledge. I might want to listen to what he has to say. And for that, I charge a nominal fee.
I think also, and we've had this conversation before with other, we've had managers on the show and agents and consultants. I think it's so vitally important. You and I, we're just a couple old guys that have been doing this, since dirt was invented.
Right.
We have seen the best of this business. We've seen the worst of it.
Yes.
We've been through the best and been through the worst. But it's like talking about Galen Adams. Guy had
that kind of guy.
So much experience, or Dennis Hannon, or Carson Schreiber, or John Kerr, or Jeff Hackett, or any of those guys that we worked with. They brought to the table what young people don't have. Now, I understand. I get it. The game has changed a little bit. The platforms are different. We're selling music. If we're selling music at all, we're selling it different. How it's being distributed, how it's being played, how it's being consumed. I get that. We've talked about that on the show previously. But going back to what you're talking about, getting in the studio, getting the music put together, figuring out all that game plan is really where you need that sage wisdom that guys like you have.
Well, me and some other people, I was shocked. I had a client call me, this is about 2 years ago, and they said, I need your help, my daughter this, my daughter that. I said, well, tell me more. He said, well, we came to Nashville and we recorded an album. And I said, oh, great, I'd love to hear it. I don't want to say I can help you. I'd like to hear the music. So he Federal Expressed it to me, and I listened to it, and it was demo quality at best.
At best.
And so I called him back. Where did you cut this? And he told me, and I was stunned. I said, who produced it? And he told me. I'd never heard of the guy. That was my first. Ding, ding. Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And they spent $150,000 on 12 tracks.
Ouch. I mean, honestly.
And that's the problem. You can't come to this city or any music-oriented or entertainment-oriented city and just, if you got a rich uncle, daddy, or you're married to somebody wealthy, you just don't come in and say, let's get going. You got to have a plan.
I actually got a message today from someone on Facebook who said, my son's a songwriter. We're down in Louisiana. Don't know what to do. I get a few of those, not a lot, but I get a few of those. And it's like, okay, well, send me the music. Let me listen to it, first of all. And then I can at least point you in the right direction and help you figure out what it is you need. Because when you said $150,000 for how many tracks?
12.
12 tracks. That's almost a Tim McGraw budget.
Exactly.
That what we would have, maybe a little more for 12 tracks. But you don't spend much more than that to do a really good album. You can. I mean, you can spend $500,000 or whatever. But I think, that's once again where that sage wisdom that I've already talked about once, that's once again where, especially if you don't know what you're doing, and it doesn't matter whether it's Nashville or Austin or Los Angeles or New York, it's getting past those sharks. What are your credentials? Who have you worked with? What have you done? And when someone says, "Oh, Tim Riley did a radio special for Dolly Parton and Tim McGraw," and then you start bringing some street cred to the game. And I think that's what, especially independent artists, but more importantly, the financial backers need to spend their time researching.
They need to hear the truth. Back in my creative days, Steve Cropper and I wrote a song for the Staple Singers. I don't know if you know who Steve Cropper is, but he's a...
Oh, yeah. I worked with Steve Cropper back in, I think it was 88. I worked with Steve Cropper, yeah.
An amazing guy. He taught me a lot. And I was the world's worst trumpet player.
No, you weren't. I was.
The jury's still out on that. But... hanging around Stax Records and High Records and being involved on the sidelines, actually watching professionals do what professionals do and how they approach it. And it's a lot of fun up until they say, okay, we're rolling. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of gets serious. And out of that seriousness can come magic. What I try to impart upon a new artist or someone that needs guidance is you can expect the magic, but you've got to work these 5 or 6 steps before you realize the magic is happening to you. And that's kind of my philosophy.
It's a reality check. It really is. How can people find you?
I used to have a website and a place for people to submit music. And I'm not the most known guy in the music business, but all of a sudden I was getting inundated. I was spending more time on the phone telling people, yeah, and I appreciate you sending me your music, but I can't help you. So I shut it down. 5 years ago, I decided what little reputation I have, I'm going to just rely on references. My contact information is simple. You can send me an email at timrileymusic@comcast.net, and we can do an introduction exchange of emails and
start the conversation.
Start the conversation. And if I'm intrigued, I might ask you to send me a couple of songs. I don't want 100 songs, because that's what I was getting when I had a website. One guy sent me 100 songs in an envelope, it was half a foot thick. If you're willing to work and you have the ability to focus daily on your goals, then I'm your guy.
Tim, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Bob. It's my pleasure.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.